Tropical storm as it batters parts of Florida. Donna Warder reports.
Robbie Berg of the National Hurricane Center says Nicole's winds have come down a bit, but it's still a large storm.
That large wind field is still producing storm surge problems along portions of the east coast of Florida, up into Georgia and South Carolina. And then even later today, we'll see some storm surge flooding in the Appalachia Bay area of Florida.
Berg says Nicole is expected to continue moving across central Florida, possibly emerge over the far northeastern Gulf of Mexico this afternoon, and then move across the Florida Panhandle and Georgia tonight into Friday. I'm Donna Warder.
Also at townhall.com, on the economic front, the number of Americans applying for jobless benefits rose slightly last week.
The Labor Department says unemployment claims for the week ending November 5th rose by 7,000 to 225,000 from 218,000 the previous week. The 4-week moving average declined by 250 to 218,750. The labor market remains healthy despite recent job cuts that have begun to spread across sectors most affected by soaring interest rates, such as housing and technology.
Correspondent Jeremy House. U.S. consumer inflation reached 7.7% in October from a year earlier, and 0.4% from September. The year-over-year increase, a slowdown from 8.2% in September, was the smallest rise since last January. Stocks bursting toward their best day in years as exhilaration sweeps Wall Street after a report showed inflation in the U.S. slowed last month. The Dow ahead 779 points down, the Nasdaq up 574. More at townhall.com.
Charlie Dombeck here from Key City Capital. As a practicing CPA for nearly 30 years, I have found that 80% of your ability to grow your wealth is dependent upon two factors: taxes and investment performance. At Key City Capital, we improve investment performance by diversifying capital into off-market investment opportunities in passive rental real estate and alternatives like asset-backed lending. We recover dollars that clients unnecessarily pay in the form of income taxes, creating a lifetime annuity of savings. We are a sponsor of passive, affordable single and multifamily residential rental investments, which are located in Sunbelt landlord-friendly states. These investments are the top choices in a rising interest rate and inflationary environment. They represent a store of value, protecting your capital from market volatility. Learn how we at Key City Capital can help you ultimately grow your wealth rapidly. Connect with me at keycitycapital.com or give me a call at 817-912-1569.
Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis.
Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
You guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for covering the local angle.
Come on, people. This is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com.
From the News Talk STL newsroom, I'm Joey Vasevich. The Olivet City Council has approved restrictions on facilities growing or processing marijuana following a months-long effort by residents to block pot farm odors. The council voted unanimously Tuesday to adopt a 750-foot residential buffer between homes and pot farms processing or testing facilities. Martin Matthews, who co-founded the Matthews-Dickey Boys and Girls Club in 1960, died Tuesday at Evelyn's House, a hospice in Creve Coeur. The club, located on North Kings Highway near Interstate 70, is a safe haven for youths to play sports, work on developing their academics, and develop life skills. Martin Matthews was 97 years old. Marvel has said they will send someone to Evelyn's House Hospice with a copy of Black Panther 2 so a 19-year-old cancer patient can watch it as part of their dying wish. A Washington University doctor put out a call previously on social media on behalf of their patient. Schnucks has announced they are opening a 30,000 square foot Eat Well market in Chesterfield Valley next year. Eat Well will emphasize organic foods, community events, and local products. And in sports, Tim Ream and Josh Sargent, St. Dominic High School grads, were among 26 players chosen for the United States team for the 2022 World Cup on Wednesday. Both were considered long shots, but injuries and the play by the two in their leagues in England put them in. For in-depth coverage of these stories and more, go to newstalkstl.com.
This was not the red tsunami.
This week on News Talk STL.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
This race is over.
News, analysis, opinion.
This race is still too close to call.
We may not know all the winners of elections for a few days.
The first woman ever elected to be the governor of the state of New York.
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
We will be in the majority.
And always streaming at newstalkstl.com. From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. It's all about temperature changes tonight. We get chilly quickly overnight. This is our last mild evening in the 60s and then a low down to 40. But then temperatures just don't warm up much on our Friday. 45 for the high, a breezy day too, 15 to 20 mile an hour winds from the northwest. May see a sprinkle and some clouds early and then mostly sunny in the afternoon. Over the weekend, even colder. Saturday's high 39 with some sunshine and Sunday mostly sunny and 43. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Got some news for you.
When it's important to you,
it's unbelievable what we watch.
It's on News Talk STL.
Can I get a job? Can I pay for my home? Can I pay my rent?
And they talk about inflation.
They can't handle 40-year high inflation.
Violence in our society.
In threats to assassinate Nancy Pelosi.
Condemn what produces the violence.
Making this political and blaming it on Republicans.
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
I will very, very, very probably do it again.
News, analysis, and opinion. This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Tony Colombo.
Libertarianism is all about individual liberty.
Katie Fitzpatrick.
Oh, good for you.
Colombo and Katie on News Talk STL.
Time to rise has been engaged. Your better best to rearrange. I'm talking here to me alone. I listen to the finest work song. Your finest hour. Your finest
Hello and welcome into Thursday here at Colombo and Katie on 1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL. I am Tony Colombo. My partner Katie Fitzpatrick, of course, is on maternity leave, so Stel Ponticus is here with me. Great to see you, buddy.
Good afternoon, my friend.
Great to see you on another crazy day. Lots to talk about, and we are going to be joined this afternoon, a little less than an hour from now, by JT from Pocket Watching with JT. He joins us every Thursday, a little after 3 o'clock. The financial show, Pocket Watching with JT, you can hear every Friday night at 8 o'clock here on News Talk STL. I'm going to get his reaction and fallout to the election results and see what he and his audience are thinking about that. Great financial planning show on Friday nights here on News Talk STL. Make sure you're checking out Pocket Watching with JT. In this entire 2 o'clock hour, we will be joined by our buddy Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com. And in about 20 minutes, we will go to the nation's capital and talk to Christian Daytalk, White House correspondent with the Washington Examiner. So looking forward to all of that. Crane Durham, back together, reunited, and it feels so good, my friend. Thanks for joining us again. How are you?
Just picture two relatively unshaped guys running across the field and going into an embrace like, we're back!
With peaches and herb in the background.
I hope you all weren't eating. Okay, so, wow. Great coverage the other night, guys.
Well, thank you. Fantastic. Thanks for being a part of it. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yes, and speaking of being a part of it, I think what I said and was pointing to, I saw the beginnings of, is starting to manifest even more, and more people are becoming vocal about it, dealing with our former president, Donald J. Trump, and his candidates, and his style, and him invoking himself into the election in Pittsburgh. So I think we're seeing a change.
Yeah, so that's been one of the stories that's been developed over the last couple days. Obviously, it was a disappointing overall night, I think, for Republicans. It could get and maybe is getting a little bit better, but it was certainly when we all left here that night, Stell, there was a feeling in the air. Like it was like a, whoa, we did not expect that to happen. And I think Republicans across the country were feeling
a bit down.
Yeah, a bit down.
But I think I think the perspective has improved.
It has.
Since
it
then.
has. And his numbers, I don't know if they can't, they can't count in Arizona or Nevada, apparently. So, we'll see how all that shakes out. But, it could, the perspective could get even better, and it has a very good chance of that happening. But it also, could go the other way. So there's still some of that to play out. Obviously, Georgia included in that as well. But Crane, one thing that is undeniable is that if there was one Republican, if there was one, area where Republicans showed their support and their dominance and their strength, it was in Florida. And it was with Marco Rubio, but more specifically with Governor DeSantis. And so what a strong, unbelievable showing and show of support for the governor down there. And so now it does really set up this, is this the time? Is this the time that he needs to move to the front of the line and be the leader and be the nominee and be the main focus for the Republican Party in 2024, which would obviously disrupt probably a whole lot of plans made by a whole lot of other folks on the right when it comes to Donald Trump. So how do you see that? How do you see that shaping up over the next few days?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There was a tsunami in Florida, and we saw that with Rubio. As you astutely pointed out, Rubio nearly 10-point victory, and DeSantis 20 points. Yeah, he's the one because of merit, quite frankly. If you judge it, well, wait a second. Okay, who handled this? Who handled this? Who got the job done? And didn't polarize people, but actually brought people in. Miami-Dade County, for heaven's sakes. It's Ron DeSantis. I must tell you, it may sound like I'm going hard at President Trump, and we got to say this because I think there are people who initially say, hey, this is the one guy who stood up for me. And I want you to know that I loved when he won. The choice I had was between Hillary and Donald Trump. I chose Trump, and I thank God he won, and his policies, he did a lot of good. But if you look at his behavior right after the election, and then in Georgia, and go back, and he basically went on a personal thing. He lost Georgia. He encouraged the mob on January 6th. And if you go back and hear conversations, then you're like, this is no more. Okay. I believe he should have been impeached for that. Yes. The impeachment of Donald Trump 2020 for that.
So Crane,
he didn't act responsibly.
So Crane, there's a lot of people that agree with everything that you're saying. And I agree with a lot of the points. But the fact is there are a lot of Donald Trump supporters, Republican Donald Trump supporters, that they love Ron DeSantis, but they love Donald Trump. And
ask them why.
Well,
why do they love him?
That's what the Republicans. That's what's going to have to be. That's what's going to have to be figured out. Because is there a way to get that base of Donald Trump supporters to support anyone, even a Ron DeSantis? Because I'm not sure that there is, and I'm not sure splitting the vote between the two is I could see that becoming a big problem for Republicans.
I think you're absolutely right on that. I think there is a problem. I think it's the appeal. If you want somebody to fight for you, DeSantis has been fighting big time. And it hasn't been always, I'm jumping to a safe harbor here. No, he stood on principle. He went with the medical evidence. He opened up Florida before our president did. He went after Fauci and disagreed with Fauci when our president Trump went with Fauci way too long.
I don't even think he closed Florida. It stayed open. To be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's and still right on.
So
here's my point.
So hang on one second, Crane. I want to ask Stell, because I don't mean to put you on the spot, Stell, but I know that you're a Trump supporter. bigger than I am probably, and certainly bigger than Crane is. What do you think about how do you look at this with DeSantis and Trump? Do you feel like that Trump should still be the one moving forward and has the momentum and has, it was taken away from him and he should have won in 2020 and he should right the wrong in 2024?
I'm disappointed with some of the personnel decisions that he made, along with the inescapable mistakes that he made online with his tweets, etc. But the policy decisions, most of them, I felt were very strong.
Sure.
I think from a Christian evangelical perspective, I don't think we've had a president who's been more positive regarding all of that, pro-life, etc. But there were folks that he appointed with whom I had major disagreements, and the way he handled the whole vaccine issue, and I think I don't know if he was stuck between a rock and a hard place with Fauci and Birx and the rest of the crew, and he knew how well therapeutics had worked. He knew how well hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin worked, and other folks were backing him up, and then all of a sudden, all of that disappeared. The censorship came in, everything was shut down, and I don't know if he felt like he was trapped there, but he didn't make any move to make an explanation for where his stance was. So I had a problem with that.
Right, but do you think that
he's ready?
The majority of Trump supporters would be able to step over to Ron DeSantis and back Ron DeSantis, even if
if DeSantis was the one for this time around? I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
But I think most of them would rather see Trump have one more shot at it and then let DeSantis go for it in 28 and 32.
And Donald Trump, one of the appeals of Donald Trump is the fighting spirit, is the desire to win, and I'm the right man for the job, and I'm, like him or hate him, that's one of the things that is appealing about him to many voters and many of his supporters. And because he is so tenacious when it comes to fighting and wanting to win, if he's decided that he's going to run, which everybody is 99.9% sure that he has, then even if he were to lose the Republican nomination, Donald Trump's the kind of guy that would run as an independent.
Wow.
And I believe
okay.
I believe that. I don't
that's interesting.
If you don't,
that's definitely a possibility. I remember when
I
it
could
came down to the
totally
Republican
see him doing that.
He raised his hand.
Yeah, I could totally see him doing that because he doesn't like to lose. He is a fighter, and
I agree.
And he's just not the kind of guy that's that steps aside.
Yeah, you wronged me.
But he's also not the kind of guy. Real quick, if I could.
Sure. Yeah. Well, please do. Go ahead. No.
Sorry.
Go.
And by the way, when I speak of Donald Trump supporters, I'm not demonizing Trump supporters.
No,
in any way. Not that you were saying that. You didn't say that. Still, you're great and all that. I just want an appeal, and I want a conversation, because I see President Trump as putting himself before party, before the conservative movement. And yes, results are there. I mean, Supreme Court alone, for heaven's sakes. Wow.
Yeah.
And Israel. Wow. Awesome. Bro, I mean, Jared Kushner, many people thought, probably a lightweight. No. He got more peace in the Middle East than the Obama administration did in 8 years.
The unfortunate thing is, Crane, that you have to put that qualification on there, because in today's age, if you are having an honest debate and being critical of certain points, it's people, take that as personal attacks. You say that you prefer Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump, and then the next person that calls you says, well, I guess you just want to put Joe Biden back in the White House because you're just so bad.
Tony,
it's ridiculous.
You're right. And here's my
But that will not happen here.
This
debate is supposed to be happening right now, and it needs to be out there. So don't feel like you have to put those qualifiers.
It's a great point in that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but it's a great point. And I would say to the people that are having that reaction, can your position hold up to reason? Can we look at the facts? Can we look at the behavior and hold it to reason? Because guess what? I don't mind if you go after my DeSantis love for DeSantis, or I'm impressed by him. I mean, I'm not. He's not Ronald Reagan yet, okay? But he's done a lot of
I like
good.
how you say yet.
And anytime I have a position, it's like if somebody criticizes DeSantis, somebody criticizes anybody, I'm sitting there going, hey, okay, that's fine. Welcome it. Oftentimes, the people that are knee-jerk on this issue point to people on the left who say you're a useful idiot, you go and you don't even think about things. All I'm asking for, and I think all that really needs to take place, is a healthy discussion where we don't call each other names in the way of, oh, DeSantis and let's just have conversation.
So we've got to go to Christian Daytalk here in just a second. My answer to that, I want to ask both of you guys this as we wrap up this point, and we could get back into this a little bit later on. There's still certainly plenty to talk about as we go through the rest of the afternoon today. My answer to this question is absolutely not. My belief is there's no chance of this happening, but I'm going to ask you guys the same thing still. You first. Is there any chance that there's some kind of union between the two? That Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump present a united front, whether they're on the same ticket or one of them waits and endorses the other one and is somehow part of the plans? Is there any chance of the two being in lockstep going forward into this?
I definitely hope so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
I don't know if I could get, on a scale of 1 to 10, I don't know if I could give you an 8 or a 9, maybe a 7 out of 10.
I think it's a 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think it's. I just don't.
Okay.
I just do not. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I just don't see that happening. I see them both as alphas, as leaders, as the number one guy, and neither one of them is the kind of one to either take a back seat or a side, a secondary role. That's how I see it. That's how I see it.
I don't know how Crane feels about it.
Crane, what do you think?
I think DeSantis is the type who would say, okay, I'm willing to go along, and I agree with you that I don't think Trump would necessarily do that at all. But
Crane, any chance the two of them have a united front going forward?
Here's what I'm going to base it on. I remember when Rubio and Cruz combined could compete and beat Donald Trump at different times. And they knew that by splitting that vote that Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, taking nothing away from President Trump in the way he ran the board. Amazing, and a story to be talked about for decades plus. But the bottom line is, when it comes to the egos of politicians, you're just not going to get that. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why they become and go for the highest office in the land, because they think and they know in themselves they can do it.
Crane, as a DeSantis supporter, would you prefer, if Donald Trump comes out and he announces next week that he's running, would you prefer DeSantis to move, if DeSantis is already planning on running, just to move forward with his plans, run, try to win the nomination away from Donald Trump, and try to convince the Trump voters that he's the right guy for the job all the way through? Or if Trump announces next week, would you rather DeSantis keep his powder dry and wait?
No, I think I want DeSantis to run. This is his time. This is the window. And I think he's got. What about you, Stel?
I'll be honest with you. I don't want to see DeSantis leave Florida. I would love to see him
You'd rather
on top in Florida for another 4 years, just because he's done such a great job.
Yeah.
And I'm hesitant to see him move on yet, because I'm thinking, boy, if he leaves Florida, I don't know who would be the one to step into his shoes.
And I think that's the opinion of Trump supporters all across the country. They want DeSantis to stay in Florida for 4 more years or 6 more years. Donald Trump win in 2024 and then hand it off to Ron DeSantis after that and take it for another 8 years. I think that's what not every, but you know what I mean. The majority of Trump supporters across the country are saying right now. But I'm not sure that's how this is going to unfold. All right. Well, we will, obviously keep an eye on all of it and continue this conversation and get into some other headlines of the day. Yeah, it's great stuff. And it's you can only get this type of conversation here at News Talk STL. We are going to go to the nation's capital, check in with Christian Daytalk, White House correspondent with the Washington Examiner. Lots to talk about happening up there in the Capitol, and we will do that when we get back to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
You're listening to Colombo and Katie. St. Louis's place to talk.
The American people have further lost faith in our governmental institutions.
People can decide what they want and how they want to live.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Since 2007, the state of Missouri and local governments have handed out almost $5 billion in tax subsidies or abatements to private developers. That money could have gone to basic services like schools and public safety. And studies show these subsidies don't produce the promised jobs and growth. If developers want to build a sports stadium or shopping mall, why should they be given our tax dollars to do it? It's time to reform economic development subsidies. The Show Me message has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Kenny Zhu, president of Color Us United.
Race became a profitable industry. That's what happened. Racial victimhood. We all believe in civil rights, but then there are people who actually profit off of racial victimhood in this country. Diversity, equity, and inclusion right now, the new hot thing in companies, is a $10 billion plus industry.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
If you believe Brandon and the supply chain issues are still in crisis, or even if you don't, hurry into Southern Armory, your Second Amendment headquarters, for the best selection of firearms, suppressors, holsters, ammunition, pepper spray, and knives. Browse through our constantly changing inventory, order something special, or have us repair or modify that firearm that you've been putting off. Try our firearms training simulator. See the demo video on our website. Come into Southern Armory, 9901 Watson Road, 1 mile east of 270 and 44, and southernarmory.com. That's southernarmory.com.
Are you the type of person who loves their community and wants it to be the best it can be? Now it's easier than ever to do your part. Go to recyclemode.com to see just how easy it is to recycle the right way. Or if you already recycle and want to be as efficient as possible, recyclemode.com can tell you what should and should not be recycled in your area. Become part of the clean recycling movement today. It's the right thing to do. Sponsored by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
It's Thursday, and we'll talk to Dr. Randy Tobler at 3:40 about the election, and at 4:25 we'll speak with Jim Carafano.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL. Stream Colombo and Katie at newstalkstl.com.
Welcome back to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. Great conversation in that first segment here in the studio. We're joined by, of course, producer Stell is here with me since Katie is on maternity leave. Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com is with us as he joins us every Tuesday and Thursday. Been a big help in Katie's absence. And that conversation that we just had in that last segment is something that is going to be a discussion that has to be had by Republicans all across the country as they decide who is the leader of their party, Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. If you missed that conversation or just want to make sure you never miss anything that happens here at Colombo and Katie, make sure you are subscribed to our podcast. We put the show out as a podcast shortly after we get off the air every day, and it's everywhere, whatever your favorite podcast platform is, Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, we're all those places and more. And also, don't forget about the Colombo and Katie YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us there. You can watch the show live stream every day in case just hearing us is not enough. If you want to look into Stell's beautiful eyes while we're on the air, you can do so on the YouTube channel.
That's a scary thought.
We post other videos there, too. So make sure
My beautiful Greek eyes.
There you go. So make sure you are checking that out. All right, joining us now on the phone, as he does every week at about this time, Christian Daytalk, White House correspondent with the Washington Examiner. Christian, always appreciate your time. It's got to be, I don't know. There's got to be a little sense of relief, maybe at the White House and amongst the Biden administration after Tuesday night. We've heard the president come out and address the nation. We've heard him speak a couple times since election night. But what is the mood there in the White House? It's got to be. It has to be better than expected, right?
Yeah, it's an extreme sense of relief over at the White House, Tony. And, around this time last week, we were talking about, if Democrats can limit their losses to, 20, 25 seats rather than upwards of 30 seats, that would be a small success. They're talking about potentially, and, I'm hedging the numbers here because we haven't had all the votes counted yet, but they could potentially hold on to both the House and the Senate. That's unlikely. But, in reality, the margin in the House is going to be a lot more like 5 to 10 seats at maximum. So President Biden seems very confident. One, he thinks voters are resonating with his economic message. And two, he's banking on that sort of rift that you mentioned earlier between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and who's going to control the party moving forward.
So I have been admitting that I was just flat wrong. I had an overwhelming gut feeling that Americans, not just here in our area, but across the country, were fed up. And the Democrats were on the wrong side of the issues. And issues like crime and schools were going to just, were so front and center and so important that we were going to see not a red wave or a red tsunami, but a lot of these progressive politicians, that a course correction by the American people, and that did not happen. It happened in some places, but it certainly didn't happen
where
across the
have.
board like I really believed that it was going to.
Yeah.
So after that, has there been a sense of has it emboldened the Democrats' progress forward, or the White House's policies or whatever plans they were making? Has this solidified that, hey, we can keep on going down the path that we were going down because American voters did not necessarily reject us on Tuesday night?
Yes and no, Tony. Like you mentioned, this side of excitement, I think one thing that will be hard for progressive Democrats to sort of wrap their head around is that the party clearly isn't over Joe Biden. And, even though exit polls are saying 65, 75% of voters don't want him or Donald Trump to be the nominee in 2024, this is a much bigger win for him than, say, Nancy Pelosi, who's going to lose her speakership. This is a bad night for Democratic leaders at the state level in New York or in Florida. So there is sort of a come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better term, because, while the polling was off on issues like abortion and, what President Biden was trying to talk about in terms of, quote, protecting democracy, the Democrats still are going to lose one of their majorities. And, the tactics that they used throughout not only the general but the primary elections, elevating some of these election-denying Republicans, most of whom who lost, but some, did go on to win their races. I think there is only going to be sort of an expedited passing of the baton from the Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi wing of the party, not only from ideological standpoint, but a generational standpoint, to the more progressive Democrats like AOC, like we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks or so.
So there's a couple of quotes that are floating around on television right now that the president has said in the last 24 hours that I would like you, if you can, if you're familiar with when these were said, put a little context around them. There's been the quote on Fox News today that Biden says he will do nothing different, all in quotes, nothing different for the next 2 years. So, exactly what I've been doing for the last 2 years, that's what I'm going to be doing for the next 2 years. And the other quote is Biden to critics in 2024, quote, watch me. Could you, can you put a little context around that? What is the president, is that indicating that he's got, that there's policy announcement? There's a plan that's about to be unveiled, or is it just, a little bit of showmanship with the watch me?
This was sort of addressed by the White House today. Obviously, the president spoke to this during his press conference yesterday, but specifically the part about how he's not going to do anything differently, that has to do with, and this, again, I'm paraphrasing Karine Jean-Pierre here. She said that this is Biden's, practice to passing legislation. He wants to include members of both parties and not just sort of steamroll the Republicans and pass everything through reconciliation in the Senate. Again, I think from President Biden's standpoint, this was a huge week for him. This is a big win, and it shows that he's on the right path. That being said, he has spent the last 4 to 5 months, branding all these Republicans as the MAGA trickle-down party, and now he's got to sort of try and bridge that gap. Because, again, even though this was a much better night for Democrats than everyone expected, the reality is they probably are going to lose one majority. So you need bipartisan support to get anything done, whether that's addressing inflation, continuing sending aid to Ukraine, passing the defense budget, which I've just seen has been pulled off the floor so that Democrats can sort of fast-track a few more judicial nominations before the year is out and they lose the majority. So while the president says he's not going to be doing things differently, the reality is he's going to have to shift a little bit. We saw him speak to Kevin McCarthy yesterday. He's invited Republicans to come to the White House to talk about inflation next week when he gets back from North Africa and Asia. So, saying one thing is certainly the president's prerogative, but I do think the way that we've seen him interacting with Republicans will end heading into these next 2 years.
We're talking to Christian Daytalk, White House correspondent with the Washington Examiner. Crane Durham is here as well. Go ahead, Crane.
Great to be with you, Christian. Appreciate all your coverage. Washington Examiner, a couple pieces today. I think Kim Ross wrote about the Trump issue. We recently just had a discussion on that with the Republican Party, and also how Florida has really led the way when it comes to voting and counting. Washington Examiner, I'm just a big fan of, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that.
You do this every week to him. You just fall all over him every week at the beginning of the interview.
He's setting the table.
You need to have Crane Durham introduce you at every event that you go to, Christian. Crane Durham is your guy. He's your hype man. I love it.
Tim Carney. I mean, okay. Here it is in a nutshell.
Here we go.
I can't stop. Between this and Bon Jovi, all right.
It just got weird.
Yes. I liked his lyrics.
Ask a question.
I'm sorry.
Get to the point.
I just saw Sam Kinison doing the Bad Medicine video. Okay, here it is for y'all. The question is what you see in the way of Trump and Ron DeSantis. Trump made a comment, hey, you're going to learn a lot about DeSantis after that. Now, in that sphere, in covering the former president, what does that mean? Do you think that if Ron decides to run, does that mean Donald Trump has some
the goods
information? Yeah. And that seems to me, excuse the expression, but it's the only thing I could think of, blackmail. What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the former president was getting at, other than that, we've seen him operate this way with political allies and business allies in the past. Trump is your biggest supporter until, it looks like certainly the case with Governor DeSantis right now. As soon as you start to take a little shine away from him, you can become an enemy. So I took this much more as like sort of a classic Trumpism, a big turning point in that relationship. Obviously, things have been, tensions have been bubbling over silently leading up to the election. But, we saw him dub the governor Ron DeSanctimonious over the weekend while campaigning in Miami. He's been putting out all these statistics about, straw polls where former President Trump is beating DeSantis by like 60% or something like that. I'm not sure where that poll was because everywhere else I've seen is a lot more even. And then I think sort of the biggest tell that we've seen is former President Trump tweeting out or truth socialing out how he earned more votes in 2020 in Florida than DeSantis did this past year. Now, obviously, this was a midterm election, and 2020 was a general election. But he's positioning DeSantis as sort of an apprentice, so to speak, in this situation. And I'm not sure it's actually going to benefit him. I think the way DeSantis has silently ignored everything Trump has been saying makes him look like the adult in the room. And I think if this continues over the next couple of weeks, especially if Ron DeSantis goes to Georgia and Herschel Walker somehow pulls off a big win over Raphael Warnock in the special election and the runoff election, that's going to be huge in terms of resetting the balance of power in the party. And I do sort of think that President Trump is bluffing when he's threatening to blackmail, like you said, Crane. Clearly someone who's looked at as the big next leader in the Republican Party, whether that's in 2024 or beyond.
Go ahead, Crane.
With the success of Kemp and mentioned DeSantis, Rubio, I mean, right down the line, and the coattails of Kemp, well, Walker didn't really get those. And so with the runoff and everything else, do you see party leadership and the Republican Party shifting away from Donald Trump? Is that in the air? Is it something different? Because I know different times there's been this idea, hey, Donald Trump did this. Okay, he's done. But is there a mood now that says, hey, he went in and stepped on a possible very good Republican wave, and he did that in Georgia before. So is there a persuadable group within the Congress that you see saying, hey, we're going to ask President Trump to step aside?
You are seeing that already, not necessarily from members of Congress, but Republican staffers. Kayleigh McEnany was on Fox yesterday, I think, maybe it was late Tuesday night, but talking about how this was a big indictment of Trump's stewardship of the party, and he should stay out of campaigning for Herschel Walker in Georgia moving forward. I mean, that's a total 180 from someone who was one of the most loyal Trump officials during that last year and a half of his administration. I think this is a wave that has only just begun to crest, honestly, Crane, and I do sort of see this as the beginning of the end for Trump and the Republican Party. I mean, let's not forget, he was a Democrat for 12 years before it became advantageous to become a Republican. The Republican Party leadership put up with him and would cater to his desires, even if they ran against what they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, because he won elections. Now that he might be losing elections, he's going to have a much shorter rope. So that's a relationship that I see deteriorating rather quickly.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful because he can't count Trump out, because just when it looks like he's starting to lose the momentum, he always figures out a way to stay relevant. That's part of the conversation that we were having just a few minutes ago. We're basically out of time here, Christian, but I want to real quick ask you 2 more quick questions. One, since we're talking about leadership, has there been any indication given by the White House or the Democratic Party in general what leadership plans are? Assuming they do go into the minority, what's Nancy Pelosi going to do? What are they going to do in the Senate? Either way, has any of that been discussed or put out there, or is that all being kept guarded at this point?
That's an interesting question, Tony, and it's something the Democrats are playing very close to the chest. Again, Karine was asked about this indirectly today, and the president spoke to it a little bit yesterday as well, and they both said, well, the results aren't final. We're not going to hypothesize about what leadership might be when we don't even know who's going to control the majority. But you have to imagine those conversations are going down behind the scenes, obviously with everything going on with Speaker Pelosi and the attack on her husband. I think maybe this might be a good time to bow out. That being said, that's not anything that's been publicly floated yet. If there's going to be a pecking order on who replaces Nancy Pelosi, or if she vies for minority leader, we're just going to have to wait and see. probably until the president gets back again from North Africa and Asia before we get a little bit more insight there.
And then finally, the defender of democracy, Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party, and their, yelling and screaming about election integrity. Has the White House taken any official stance or said anything officially about like what's happening in Arizona and other places, and this inability to get results and to get a count in a timely fashion, or are they just kind of sitting this one out?
Outside of, sort of cautioning people that votes might not be counted entirely on election night, that's an issue that they had ignored. And I do think President Biden's own past statements on the security and the legitimacy of this election in the past, that's something they want to distance themselves from right now. I think last week we talked about how in January he talked about the voting rights bills must be passed to ensure that it's a legitimate election. Obviously, that's a different tone than he was striking in recent weeks. So like you just pointed out, this is one that they're probably going to sit out and just going to sit on their hands and let the results trickle in. And if they lose, too bad. But if they win, it could have been much worse. So we're counting that as a win anyway.
I don't know what. Maybe they just use different numbers in Arizona. Maybe math is just harder because I don't get it. I don't understand what takes so long.
It's because they don't do daylight savings times.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
That must be it. Christian Daytalk, White House correspondent with the Washington Examiner. Really appreciate your time as always, my friend. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Be well. Thanks as always.
That is Christian Daytalk. You can follow him at Talk Radio, at TOC Radio on Twitter. You can also read Christian's articles on the Washington Examiner website, as well as our website, newstalkstl.com. And, of course, he joins us every week here on Colombo and Katie as well. All right, we're going to talk to JT from Pocket Watching with JT just after 3 o'clock today. Crane Durham sticking around. More to talk about some of the fallout here locally from election night, and an update on the count in Arizona and Nevada. And also, I've got a little bit more from the White House, a little bit more about Joe Biden's last day and a half. We will get into all of that in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
If you seek the truth, then you will surely find it. Everybody wants to have global peace.
As a noun, hiatus is an interruption in time, a pause, or a break. As a tequila, hiatus is naturally clean yet complex, ideal for sipping neat, but it also shines in a cocktail. Some companies cut corners, but we prefer to take our time, as our blue agave plants take up to 8 years to fully ripen. We got your taste at Hiatus Tequila. Go on a hiatus from the everyday. You deserve it.
Get 10% off your first order using coupon code HOLLY10 on shophiatustequila.com.
Hey, Tim Jones here for Rockwood Charcoal. If you love to grill as much as I do, I'm sure you prefer using charcoal over gas. Ever since I met Jonathan Heslop and he introduced me to his product, Rockwood Lump Charcoal, we're not using anything else. Rockwood's made from 100% pure Missouri oak and hickory and can be found in stores all across the country. It's the nationally highest consumer-ranked charcoal there is, so you're cooking with the best and supporting local industry and a local business right from my hometown of Eureka. There's over 100 area Rockwood retailers. Find yours at rockwoodcharcoal.com.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable-rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midget, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL. If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
But I'm not going to turn my dial off to you guys. I really like this channel.
This is News Talk STL. Welcome home. You're listening to Colombo and Katie.
Tony Colombo here with Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com. He's with us for one more segment. And then in the 3 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by JT from Pocket Watch with JT. Producer Stell here, of course, as well, with Katie on maternity leave. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Coal miners slam Joe Biden as White House walks back the shutdown pledge. Coal miners and industry groups representing coal production companies ripped President Biden days after he pledged to shut down coal plants and replace them with wind and solar alternatives. Quote, we're going to be shutting these plants down all across America and having wind and solar power, Biden said at a campaign event in Southern California late last week. He went on to say, it's cheaper to generate electricity from wind and solar than it is from coal and oil. And then he said, literally cheaper, not a joke. I hate when he says not a joke. That is one of the things that drives me crazy. He says that. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Nobody ever said thought it was a joke, Joe.
Come on, man.
I hate it. Anyway, this is a personal thing. The White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre clarified the comments, saying that Biden had been merely commenting on, quote, a fact of economics and technology, and that his words were being twisted. She said during a press briefing that the president's remarks were being misconstrued because it was, quote, loud and hard to hear at the rally. That is literally what the press secretary at the White House said, that Joe Biden's words are being twisted and misconstrued because it was loud and hard to hear at the rally. He said this, quote, we are going to be shutting down these plants all across America. That's how do you twist that, Crane? Did we lose him?
Did we lose Crane?
Oh man, that was a big grandiose setup.
It was a great setup, but you know what?
What do you think?
I will toss in that video clip that I remember from maybe a few months back, where he was confronted by a teenage gal. It might have also been in California. And he just spoke straight into her face that we will shut down the fossil fuel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no misinterpreting anything.
Yeah, there's no misinterpreting anything. Why don't you want to call him? You want to
Sure.
see if we can get Crane?
No, don't.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry about that.
There he is.
I was talking. I don't even want to tell you. But here's the deal.
Yeah, go ahead. You're right. You're back. You're good. Go ahead.
All right. So he's saying that the sun and wind are cheaper. Yes. But what if they don't work? What if the wind doesn't blow? What if the sun doesn't shine? Oh, Germany found that out.
Yes.
So what he's talking about is he's saying we're going to use energy that does not work, is not secure, and cannot generate the electricity that you are going to need to stay warm during the winter.
Right.
Hey, we're going to drive right there. Go ahead, drive off the cliff. He's going to be warm. I get it. But the rest of us are going to be very chilly.
Yeah, and what if it's just not ready, Crane? Like we all go on that path. We all want to get there, but to artificially force it to happen and not let capitalism and innovation be the driving forces behind it is going to spell disaster. Go ahead.
Look at Solyndra. Look at the fact that oftentimes the private sector will be the most efficient way to get something done if you release capital and people see investments, because, when you are investing as a citizen, as an individual or an individual company, wow, you really watch what works, what doesn't. It's not like, hey, we really need the government to prop this up. So the bottom line is Jean-Pierre says, it's just simple economics. Was there somebody in the White House pool to say, wait a second, what if it doesn't work? What if Germany found that out and had to reignite coal plants, restart them? This has been tried.
I just like we're to the point now with the president of the United States where it was loud and hard to hear is now apparently an acceptable answer at the podium at the White House. Crane, we only got a few minutes left. I want to rapid fire a few things here because I want to get through them. Let's go to Arizona. We mentioned that. So the latest there in Arizona is 70% of the vote counted, which is just still absolutely unbelievable.
Which is the same as last night, I believe.
Yeah, I think
so. There's been no drop since then.
68%, I think, when we left here last night or something like that. Katie Hobbs in that governor's race still leads with 50.3 to Carrie Lake's 49.7. Crane, how do you see this unfolding in Arizona?
Katie Hobbs is probably the worst candidate I've seen in my lifetime. And I mean that in the way she doesn't communicate, the way she does communicate. and just her general stance on running. Carrie Lake, I've seen make unbelievable appearances and do so well, and yet she seemingly, and I'm still checking this out, but making these comments that are very Trumpian, but not really ones that bring everybody into the fold, okay? And are not going to convince people you disagree with. So that's one thing. I think it's going to be close. I think Carrie Lake's going to win it, but I don't know. Like you, Tony, like you, Stell, I don't know.
And how long is it? Will they be voting in Georgia again before they finally count the last vote in Arizona? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that it takes this long. Speaking of,
I will say, Crane, though, one thing, Crane, in the primary, the votes that came in for the last 30 to 40% of the precincts, those were 70 to 30 in favor of Kerry. And I can see that happening again here. I'm not saying it will, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does, and she may win by 4 or 5 points.
She looks like she could be in a good position.
I was very impressed by her.
Yeah.
I've been impressed by her. I know that she has this, reckless side, and I just hope that over time in leadership she steers away from that.
So,
but bottom line,
I want to do a quick update on the
do well.
Georgia runoff election. This is how big of a deal and how crazy this is going to get. This just gives you a sense of it. The election campaign for the runoff officially started yesterday when it was announced. Yesterday, in the first day of the campaign, the Herschel Walker campaign announced that they had raised over $3.3 million in that first 24 hours. And then they released another update a little bit before the show today and had raised another $1 million in just the first half of today, before noon today on Thursday. So $4.3 million raised for Herschel Walker in 36 hours, essentially. Crane, only about 30, 45 seconds here, but just how, the Georgia Senate runoff, does Herschel Walker have a better chance at defeating Warnock?
I think so.
And covering that gap?
I think so, and I hope Trump stays out of it.
Yeah.
I really do, because I think they delivered for Kemp, and they'll come home for Herschel.
That's one of the most interesting things is that Kemp, that a lot, the people that voted for Brian Kemp that didn't vote for Herschel Walker, there's hundreds of thousands of them that did that because you could just do the math and see that, and that's one of the very interesting developments and stories out of Georgia. Crane, always appreciate your time, my friend. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Tuesday of next week and Thursday of next week.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Nice to talk with y'all.
Crane Durham from nothingbuttruth.com. You can always follow him there, and as I mentioned, he's been helping us a whole lot since Katie's been on maternity leave. He's been joining me every Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure you never miss those shows. All right, we are going to talk to JT from Pocket Watching with JT when we get back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
When's the last time you checked your 401k balance? Well, let me prepare you. It's not pretty. The 40-year record high inflation has cost many Americans almost 25% of their 401k savings, and with a volatile market hinting at a possible worse recession, I'm worried. Are you? Meanwhile, President Biden was recently questioned at an ice cream shop if he was worried about the economy.
Our economy is strong as hell. Inflation is worldwide. It's worse off everywhere else than it is in the United States.
So you have a choice to make. You can sit back and relax like the president and act like nothing is happening, or you can be proactive and call Steve All of the All Financial Group and stop losing your money. Call Steve today and ask for that Stop Losing the Money plan. 636-230-8824. That's 636-230-8824. Or visit yourmoneymattersstl.com. Advisory services offered through Retirement Wealth Advisors, LLC, the All Financial Group, and Retirement Wealth Advisors not affiliated. Insurance and annuities offered through the All Financial Group.
Selling your home is probably one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. So if you're going to do that, be sure you go with the #1 realty team in St. Louis. That happens to be Rodney and Jen Wallner, the Wallner Home Selling Team at Berkshire Hathaway. Their phone number, 314-810-SOLD. They will guarantee to get you an offer, and they sell 15 times more homes than your typical real estate company in St. Louis, and they will get the job done. Am I right, Mike Ferguson?
Yeah, Vic, that's right. I mean, my wife, Rachel, and I, when we decided we're going to buy some property and we're going to get that, Airbnb investment, also that that home that we can go to just to get out of town for a little bit. We only thought about Rodney and Jen Wallner. We gave them a call. I called the same number we ask everybody else to call, 314-810-SOLD. And I've got to tell you, personal experience, their advice, so empowering, so comforting. We know that we're moving the right direction. 314-810-SOLD.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. President Biden will meet with China's president at next week's Group of 20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. Greg Clugston with that report.
The announcement of Monday's meeting comes amid increasingly strained U.S.-China relations over Taiwan, trade, and Russia. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
President Biden has made it a priority to keep lines of communication open with President Xi, to responsibly manage the competition between our two countries.
It will be the first in-person meeting between the leaders of the world's two biggest economies since Mr. Biden took office. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Also at townhall.com, among the Republicans who had success on Election Day was Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. He credits his big margin of victory to his party's emphasis on education, including school choice for parents.
Particularly where they're in failing schools. They're in schools where it's very difficult for the kids to get the right education. We want to put poor kids on the same par with rich kids. That parents, do have a choice.
Governor DeWine was interviewed by the Salem Radio Network. Stocks are bursting toward their best day in years as exhilaration has swept Wall Street. Financial markets worldwide after a report showed inflation slowed last month by even more than had been expected. The most dramatic action may be happening in the bond market. Treasury yields sank sharply as investors paired bets on how aggressive the Federal Reserve will be in the future in hiking interest rates to get inflation under control. Big rate hikes by the Fed have been the main reason for Wall Street's recent struggles and are threatening a recession. The Dow finishing ahead 1,182 points. The Nasdaq was up 760. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Relief factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Hi, my name's Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold, the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink Award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
Another restriction on females in one Muslim nation.
The Taliban is banning women from using gyms in Afghanistan. The move is the latest restriction that has seen the religious group crack down on women's freedoms since they took power more than a year ago. Ever since the Taliban overran Afghanistan last August, they have banned girls from middle school and high school and restricted women from taking on most jobs. They have also ordered women to wear head-to-toe clothing in public. The constant curtailing of women's liberties is a U-turn from their initial promises to the country that women's rights would be respected. I'm Karen Chamas.
The European Union's executive arm has proposed pollution standards for new combustion engine vehicles, lowering nitrogen oxide emissions from cars and vans by 35% compared to existing exhaust emission regulations for pollutants other than carbon dioxide. Breaking news at townhall.com. Latest round of peace talks between Ethiopia's government and representatives of the country's Tigray region have been extended. That 2-year conflict estimated to have killed hundreds of thousands of people. The remains of 18 indigenous people have been returned to Australia from England.
At a handover ceremony in Oxford, 17 of the 18 remains were handed over to the Australian government, set to be placed in museums across the country. There, further research will be done to identify their traditional custodians. The final set of remains, found to be those of a female taken from South Australia in 1900, were handed to representatives of her Southeast First Nations people, who were also in attendance. Repatriation is a crucial practice to Australia's Indigenous population, and is seen as honouring the cultural importance of laying ancestors to rest in their traditional lands.
BBC correspondent Jacob Evans. More on these stories at townhall.com. I'm John Scott.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. It's all about temperature changes tonight. We get chilly quickly overnight. This is our last mild evening in the 60s and then a low down to 40. But then temperatures just don't warm up much on our Friday. 45 for the high, a breezy day too, 15 to 20 mile an hour winds from the northwest. May see a sprinkle and some clouds early and then mostly sunny in the afternoon. Over the weekend, even colder. Saturday's high 39 with some sunshine, and Sunday mostly sunny and 43. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
You're listening to Colombo and Katie.
In my shoes, my toes are busted. My kitchen says my bread is molded. I got a good job at the dollar store.
Welcome back to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. One more segment here for us until we hand things over to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show at 3:30. Want to remind you, in just a moment, we're going to talk to our friend JT from Pocket Watching with JT. But I want to remind you that that was a great 2 o'clock hour, if I don't mind saying so myself. And you never want to miss anything like that. And you don't have to, because you can podcast Colombo and Katie. We put the show out as a podcast shortly after we go off the air every day. And you can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whatever it may be, Apple, Amazon, Google, or Spotify. You can also subscribe to us on the Colombo and Katie YouTube channel. And you should be doing that for all of the shows here at News Talk STL, the podcast, the YouTube channels. And, of course, you can also follow everything that we do here at the radio station on Facebook and on Twitter and on Rumble. Rumble has just become a just really big, active, interactive platform for us, and we love to see that growth over there. So make sure you're following News Talk STL on Rumble, as well as all of those other places. All right, joining us now on the phone is Jason Thornton, the host of Pocket Watching with JT, which you can hear every Friday night at 8 o'clock here on News Talk STL. You can also watch the show, speaking of YouTube, on the Pocket Watching YouTube channel. The show is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that Friday show is not only live on YouTube, but it's live here on the radio as well. Jason, always appreciate your time. Thanks for calling in. How's it going?
Great. Thanks, Tony.
So, obviously, we've been obsessed with the election this week. Your show, as we talk about every week, and for people that listen, I think is one of the most appealing things about it is that you guys are more focused on everyday life, paying your bills, going to work, paying for rent, buying groceries, buying gas. And obviously the election and all these other issues have impacts on that, but that's the focus. That's what people are dealing with every single day. They're not dealing with, who is going to be, who are we going to appoint as Speaker of the House? No, they're worried about, like how much is the next trip to the grocery store going to cost? And I love that focus, and I love that conversation that you guys have every week. So my first question for you is, how much of an impact do you think Tuesday night's election is going to have on your conversations and your listeners? Or is it going to be like, hey, look, it's a dramatic election, lots of news and drama to talk about, but doesn't change anything for me and paying my bills every day. What's the conversation and the impact?
Yeah, I mean, the impact is going to be something that's going to be felt more in the long term than we're going to feel in the short term. Obviously, I mean, when you talk about public policy, those things come a little slower than what we would like to see. So, obviously there is always going to be things that are going to affect our pocketbooks, but, we're just trying to live day to day and make sure we're making the right decisions with our money. And hopefully we have politicians in place that are supporting that effort.
So not only are you a show host, a radio expert in this area, you are a real life expert in the financial area as a certified financial planner and somebody that does this for a living. Just from that aspect, just your personal reaction to what happened on Tuesday night. Did it change the path of the country's on in any way? Was it good for the economy? Was it bad for the economy and people's pocketbooks? Is it, does it all come out in the wash? Like, personally, what was your thoughts about the impact of the election on everyday finances?
Yeah, honestly, based on what I've seen, we're not going to see a huge change of the direction of where the economy is going. The economy is, headed so far off the cliff that kind of regardless of what we do in the short term, we're going to have to feel that impact. We're talking about, a market that has been raging hot for so long. A lot of it was artificially raging hot based on, decisions that the Federal Reserve made. So, regardless when it comes to the short term, in the next 8 months, you're going to feel an impact of the recession that no one single election would have been able to stop anyway. We're more thinking about long term.
I want to get your thoughts on this story that was out today on CNN, a CNN piece that's been making news for the last day or so. Spoke with critics knocking the lottery system as a form of systematic racism that targets poor black and brown communities across America. The largest Powerball jackpot lottery ticket ever was recently sold in California, with one lucky winner winning over $2 billion. The odds of winning were 1 in 292.2 million. Researchers told CNN that despite the extremely low chance of winning, state lotteries still aggressively market the lottery and sell tickets to low-income communities at higher rates, thus misleading Americans to believe it will help them quickly generate wealth. Quote, these communities are disproportionately made up of black and brown people. Critics say the consequence is that marginalized people will be driven into deeper debt by a system that is transferring wealth out of their communities. Do poor people play the lottery more than rich people? Absolutely. I think it's definitely targeted, but I think personally, I think it has more to do with your wealth than it does your color. But the point stands. As a financial guy, as a person who deals with this finances every single day, what do you think of the lottery? What do you think of the idea of the lottery and all this talk that this is not the first time this conversation's been brought up. This has been right. People have been talking about buying lottery tickets and who it targets and where the money goes and why it's good or why it's bad for years. What's your stance?
Honestly, I just feel like there's a particular group of people within our country that are always trying to find an argument where there truly is none. There's a difference between something happening at the same time and causation, right? There's correlation and there's causation. The fact that you have minority communities that play the lottery a lot has nothing to do with their race. It has more to do with their economic status. Poor people play the lottery because they believe it's an opportunity for them to gain wealth in a quick way. Period. It doesn't matter what your color is. If you have someone or a situation where they say, hey, for a little amount of effort, buying, a few dollars worth of a lottery ticket, you could become a millionaire. That becomes appealing to people who don't know any better. They think that, it's a harmless thing. I literally had a client come into my office one day who won $40,000 in the lottery. But ultimately, when we had to calculate all the losses that they had for that year, they lost $6,000.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with your mindset around money.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I know every week you guys, it's a great show that talks about everything. Take calls from all over the country, so a lot of topics get touched on every week. But I know that you have a sort of broad topic or focus going into every show. What's tomorrow's topic?
So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the top 3 money mistakes that everyday people make and how you can avoid them. I mean, honestly, most people think they have an income problem. That's why they live paycheck to paycheck, but they really have a spending problem. And if they can make sure they avoid these 3 ways that they're spending their money, they'll do better.
Can you share one of the 3 with us? I don't want to give away tomorrow's show, but I want to tease a little bit, and I want to learn a little bit.
One is definitely stop buying whole life insurance. They need to focus on buying term insurance and invest the difference. And this is something that is predicated on people who are mostly in the middle class and low income. Whole life insurance is presented by a lot of insurance salesmen as the key to building wealth, but most of the time it just ends up draining the pocketbooks of the other people that buy it.
Do you expect your callers to be talking about the election? Do you expect that to come up a lot? Reaction to it, or thoughts about it, or worries about it?
No, very little.
Yeah,
honestly, they're not going to speak on it until they feel it in their pocketbooks, and they're not going to feel it in their pocketbooks for the next few months.
Yeah, as an expert in the financial area, was Tuesday long term for the economy? Was Tuesday a good day or a bad day?
Honestly, we're still waiting. Yeah. It wasn't a big enough change to say, "Oh yeah, I think we're going to be heading in the right direction." It's lukewarm, and when you deal with a situation that's lukewarm, it can go either way.
Well, Pocket Watch with JT is an absolutely excellent show, and it's our one of our newest shows here at the radio station. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you do so. Subscribe to the Pocket Watch with JT YouTube channel. The show is live on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that Friday show is also live here on News Talk STL starting at 8:00 every Friday night. JT, there's always new listeners tuning in every day. So from your words, what can they expect if they tune in tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a call-in financial advice show. You call in with your personal financial question, and I will give you the financial tip so that you can reach your goals.
There you go. Very caller-driven, and because of the large YouTube audience that JT has built, those calls come in from all over the country. So make sure you are checking that out tomorrow and every Friday night at 8:00, Pocket Watching with JT here on News Talk STL. JT, thanks as always for your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll be listening tomorrow night.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
You bet. Great stuff there. Stell's also the producer of that show. And Jason... Not only is he a great show, it's a great show. What a great guy to work with.
He is a fun guy to work with, and the show is not just about economics. It's fun to listen to because JT is very upbeat. And as I've mentioned before, folks can call in with any type of question, and even if they feel as though it's something that everybody else knows the answer to and I don't, and you feel embarrassed, JT will just tell you, hey, don't be embarrassed about any question. I'll take them all, and I'll give you an honest answer.
And they deal with it. It deals with everyday issues. It deals with everyday struggles. People calling in and talking about, how much they're paying for gas and, what they are struggling with at the grocery store and paying rent and, paying their mortgages. Like it's the real stuff that
the
people
everyday
are
stuff.
Dealing with every single day.
Yeah.
That drives the discussion on Pocket Watching with JT. So make sure you are checking that out again on YouTube, on the Pocket Watching with JT YouTube channel, and every Friday night at 8:00. Got a few minutes left here. Want to dive back into some of the headlines of the day. The Supreme Court in the news. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor today rejected an appeal from New York City workers who are challenging the city's COVID-19 vaccine. The workers include firefighters, teachers, police officers, sanitation workers, and others who lost their jobs after the city rejected their request for a religious exemption to the COVID vaccine mandate. They filed an emergency application to Sotomayor requesting that the court temporarily stop the city from enforcing the vaccine mandate while the group challenges the city in a lower court. Sotomayor denied their request today without comment and did not consult her colleagues in her decision, which she's not required to do, but they sometimes do. She didn't this time. The reason that this story, this stands out for a couple of reasons. One, there's still a vaccine mandate in the city of New York. I mean, are you kidding me? I can't believe that is still something that people are dealing with. But it really highlights, particularly right now, as we talk about the frustration of getting answers and, what's going to happen in Georgia. And why can't they count votes in Arizona? And why can't they count votes in Nevada? And what's going to happen in Alaska? This is all still front and center. And it is a stark reminder, what are the consequences of people are saying, well, if it ends up being, if Republicans, if they do take back the House, but it's only a seat or two, it doesn't matter, that's not good enough. Or, if it doesn't matter if you can only get one, if you only get 51 in the Senate and one of them's Lisa Murkowski because she's basically a Democrat, so it doesn't matter. No, this highlights exactly why all of these things are so important, because the Supreme Court, 2 more years at least, 2 more years of the possibility of not just Supreme Court, but especially Supreme Court, but judges being appointed, judges being approved. If that ever, if we find ourselves in that situation, the balance of the Senate, the power balance in the Senate is huge. And I think this is a stark reminder of the consequences of Tuesday. It's kind of coming out in the wash now, and people are starting to think okay, maybe it wasn't as good as for Republicans as many had hoped for, but maybe it's not as bad as it was, and things are going to be okay. And no, this is why elections matter, because these types of consequences, if you don't like the fact that a Supreme Court justice is just denying the request of thousands of workers in the nation's biggest city about a vaccine mandate I can't even believe still exists, then you got it. This is important stuff.
I got to be honest with you. From my perspective, it's one of the reasons why I have a real problem with the way the judicial system is responding to anything these days. Everything is no. We're not going to look into it. You don't have standing. You don't have this. You don't have that. And I'm really, really frustrated with this double standard that we're seeing in the judicial system.
It's a really good point, Stel, because it seems like in the justice system and there's other areas in the country that this has happened in too, that the pandemic opened the door for excuses to not move forward with things or to delay things. It made it easy because, we're in a COVID pandemic shutdown. And it was easy to go, you know what? Because we're in a pandemic, we are going to do things differently. And these types of cases or this type of situation, we're not even going to deal with right now. And all of a sudden it got real easy to do that. And now it's like they want to keep the easier, lighter, workload, I guess, without the excuse of having it. But because it was the system that was put in place, you can kind of get away with keeping that along. Because to me, that's when this all happened. That's when this change, this slowdown of processing hearings and lawsuits and court cases and things like that, it all changed during the pandemic.
It did.
That's when, and that's so.
It did.
To me, that's where it started, and now they're using that to kind of just make this the new normal,
and
instead of getting back to the way things used to be.
Businesses were affected, lives were affected. People have moved from New York City, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, L.A., Frisco. A lot of those folks have moved to Florida, Tennessee, Texas. Folks, I have friends from Chicago, friends and relatives who have moved to Florida, and it's specifically because of the way Pritzker and the Illinois system shut everything down, and schools were shut down. Everybody had to deal with folks getting fired. If you didn't get the if you didn't get the injection, you wound up out of a job.
Yeah.
And folks decided, I can't take this anymore. I don't want my kids out of school for 2 years. I don't want to be punished for what I feel like it's my own decision. And what happened to my body, my choice, that went out the window.
It depends on it depends on the topic. It depends on the issue.
So
whether you have
and I saw these
control
folks,
of your body.
they've moved down to Florida and to Texas. So good for them. And I think it was reflected in the voting that was done on Tuesday.
I'm going to tee this one up for tomorrow because we have got to make way for Tim and Chris. But this headline will leave you on a very frustrating note in this. We will pick up this conversation tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I promise. Eric Swalwell says it's so stupid for parents to control their kids' education.
Oh, my.
The representative from California tweeted out earlier today how stupid it is for parents to be in charge of their kids' education. He was responding to a quote from Senator Tim Scott, who had previously said, quote, "We are putting parents back in charge of their kids' education," to which United States Congressman Eric Swalwell said, "Please tell me what I'm missing here. What are we doing next? Putting parents in charge of their own surgeries? Clients in charge of their own trials? When did we stop trusting the experts? This is so stupid."
Oh, trusting the experts. Here
Wow.
we go. Yeah.
Wow. So
I guess you didn't learn from Virginia and from all the school board administration meetings that we've had, and then the votes that were on Tuesday, where we saw more school boards going through changes and parents lashing out. I don't understand where he's looking.
I look forward to picking up that conversation when we are back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Right now, time to hand things over to the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show. Subscribe to the Colombo and Katie podcast and YouTube channel if you haven't already, so you never miss anything that happens here. And don't go anywhere. Tim and Chris coming in next. Thank you so much for supporting us and listening to us here at 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
My bread is molded. I got a good job at the dollar store.
Welcome home to St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
We start off with 2 words.
News, analysis, and opinion.
It's been a very exciting night.
The people have delivered their verdict.
I will work just as hard.
We are never going to abandon common sense.
To make this new term.
Freedom is here to stay.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Fox News commentary.
We didn't get everything we wanted this week, but now is no time to give up. We have a country to save. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.